I wonder whether reform making it an immigration election damaged you.
Oh, no, forgive me, but I was going to continue because there's a whole host of other things that we didn't deliver on.
Don't let me stop you.
No. You're doing a very good job on your own, so I'll let you continue. But, you know, if you don't deliver on your promises as politicians, and some big promises have been made in this election, the British people are rightly cross with you. And we failed to deliver on some of the promises we made in the time we had available and got rightly punished for it.
Do you think Rishi Sunak would be right to resign this morning, or should he stay on for some weeks in order to make it easier to have a more long-termist Tory leadership election?
Well, I prefer him to stay on for a period of time, a short period of time, so we can actually have that coming together of the Conservative Parliamentary Party, the 120 that are left, because they need to work out amongst themselves that they need to be unified, because we need to rebuild in opposition. We need to offer opposition to Keir Starmer, who I completely congratulate. The Labour Party have won this election fairly and squarely. It's the most wonderful thing. I think Jeremy Hunt might have said it. The most wonderful thing about our democracy is that we can change governments by putting pieces of paper in a ballot box. Other countries, really would love to have that. And he mentioned our support for Ukraine in that context. This is a change of government. Congratulations to the Labour Party. I now want them to govern for the whole of Britain.
And how long should Rishi Sunak stay on? Till the end of the month, until September or October? What do you think is a sensible period of time for him to give you that breathing space?
Well, I'm not in the Parliamentary Party anymore. I stepped down at this election.
I know. So, it means you can just give advice without fear or favour.
I'm not mad keen on being a commentator on something that's just happening at this point in time. But I do think
given you on Good Morning Britain, you might as well have a go.
Well, you tend to fill in the gaps for me. But I will definitely say that a few weeks would be very helpful for the Parliamentary Party to come together here to work out what sort of opposition they can be. 120 members is really a small number. Our worst result for in living memory and beyond. And we need to work out what we actually stand for, how we want to present ourselves, how we can be that opposition in a parliament that's massively changed.
Famously, when Labour lost, a Labour minister left a note in a drawer for his successor saying, "There's no money left." What note would you leave in the drawer for the incoming Labour government?
Well, I mean, inflation's down at a decent level, so and there's money left, so that's a good thing. I would leave a little note for the incoming Northern Ireland Secretary, who I hope will be Hilary Benn, who's a really nice guy. But I know he supports Stormont sitting. I know he supports the Windsor Framework, and that will be tested in the coming weeks and months. And my advice would be simply to stick with it, because it's really good for the people of Northern Ireland.
But the financial crisis, of course, led to years of austerity under a Tory and coalition government. What do you think the big, challenging issues are going to be for this incoming Labour government?
Well, I mean, they've made a huge number of promises across the board, and it's down to the Keir has got a big majority to deliver on all his promises. But and it's not for me to advise an incoming Labour government. But they'd have heard on the doorstep, as I had, that people are concerned about the levels of immigration. They are concerned about housing. They are concerned about planning. They are concerned about energy security, the defence of the realm, a whole host of things. And the Labour Party manifesto had themes on those bases, and I'm sure they'll be delivered on.
Chris Heaton-Harris, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Northern Ireland Secretary. So that brings us to 8:17 and our main news update now. The headline this morning: Sir Keir Starmer has won a landslide victory in the general election, ending 14 years of Conservative government. Labour is predicted to win 414 seats in total, which could give them a Commons majority of 178.
The former Prime Minister Liz Truss, the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps and Commons leader Penny Mordaunt all lost their seats overnight. The Liberal Democrats also beat the Education Secretary Gillian Keegan, but the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt clung on to his seat by just 900 votes.
Reform UK's leader Nigel Farage has finally become an MP. And the party has a majority... Oh, no, he individually got a majority of more than 8,000, and the party has 4 MPs so far.
And Lorna Shannock has the latest on what was an historic night for Labour and a disastrous night for the Conservatives.
The exit poll is here. It is predicting a Labour landslide.
The result may have been widely expected, but the size of it gives this new Prime Minister plenty to smile about.
We did it! You campaigned for it, you fought for it, you voted for it, and now it has arrived. Change begins now.
The first Labour resident of Downing Street since 2010 will be joined there by the first ever female Chancellor.
We will not let you down. I will not let you down. And I can't wait to get started. Thank you very much.
A glum-looking Rishi Sunak, who says he'll stay on as an MP, faces potentially the worst result in his party's history.
The Labour Party has won this general election, and I have called Sir Keir Starmer to congratulate him on his victory. The British people have delivered a sobering verdict tonight. There is much to learn and reflect on, and I take responsibility for the loss.
He apologised to the many Conservative MPs now out of a job. They include his predecessor, Liz Truss, who lost by around 600 votes and left without making a speech.
I think what happened with Liz and myself was a big part of this, but it wasn't the only ingredient of this defeat. And I think there were mistakes made in the last 18 months.
Many other big names also fell victim to the widespread anti-Tory feeling, including former Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg, Education Secretary Gillian Keegan, Commons leader Penny Mordaunt and Defence Secretary Grant Shapps.
What is crystal clear to me tonight is that it's not so much that Labour won this election, but rather that the Conservatives have lost it.
This is the man whose scythe cut a swathe through so many Conservative MPs. Despite deciding to stand just 4 weeks ago, Nigel Farage's insurgent Reform UK is already looking ahead to the next general election.
We're coming for Labour, be in no doubt about that. Believe me, folks, this is just the first step of something that is going to stun all of you.
The night was also a thrilling one for the Lib Dems, taking Tory territory through tactical voting and cementing a comeback as Westminster's third party.
It may actually be one of the best results we've ever had in the history of the party, so it's very exciting.
Sir Keir Starmer didn't get it all his own way. His predecessor, now an independent, taking Islington North from Labour. And 2 shadow cabinet members lost, including to the Greens in Bristol. In Wales, there are no Tory MPs left. And though Labour are on track to be the largest party, they've lost ground to Reform and Plaid Cymru. While in Scotland, the SNP could end the election on a single-digit number of seats, practically wiped out by the Labour fightback.
Yes, the work starts for change from a UK Labour government, but we ramp up our efforts to make sure we're ready for 2026 and to deliver that change in Scotland too.
As Rishi Sunak prepares to leave Number 10 for the last time, his battered party will already be gearing up for another battle over who leads it next.
Today we start the next chapter, begin the work of change, the mission of national renewal, and start to rebuild our country. Thank you.
For Sir Keir Starmer, a trip to the palace before appointing his cabinet, as he becomes the most powerful PM since 1997. Lorna Shannock, Good Morning Britain.
Right, well, let's speak to a senior member of the victorious Labour Party this morning. I think you're the first person we've seen with a very broad smile on their face down there at Westminster. Liz Kendall, Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, although we don't know what's going to happen in the new government. Do you know?
Don't. No idea.
OK. No. So that is all in the gift of your leader, Sir Keir Starmer.
I do whatever he asks me to do on the front bench, the back bench, wherever he...
If your mobile phone rings during this interview, do please feel free to answer it. Don't miss the call.
The last time he called me, I was in prep, just about to go on the telly then, and when he offered me the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary job, yes, so it'll probably happen now.
We won't be offended if you suddenly say, I've got to go and run off.
OK, thanks, Ed.
We'll let you do that. But in the meantime... congratulations are in order, of course, to you and to the Labour Party. The thing is that people are now going to expect change. It is the one-word theme of your campaign. What is that going to look like?
They do expect change, and I don't blame them, because they look around Britain and feel everything's broken. They can't get a GP appointment, the trains don't run on time, everything seems... They can't get a police officer if they've got a problem in their local area. And we know how hard this is going to be. We know that you can't immediately put right all the wrongs of the last 14 years, but our first 6 steps shows how we'll make a start. I mean, you'll know, Susanna, we were criticised during the campaign for not having bigger, bolder change. But the truth is that you have to make change step by step by step. And I remember, because I'm a little bit long in the tooth now, that in 1997, on our pledge card, we said we'd get 100,000 patients off the waiting list. And we were criticised, we were attacked for saying it wasn't big enough. But we left office having ended waiting. But we did it when we had the money and when we had the right reforms in place, and we took people step by step to those improvements. They do want change. They'll hold us to account for that. And as Keir said, we'll enjoy this evening, but the work starts from tomorrow. I haven't had my evening yet, but he's right. We will roll up our sleeves and get cracking.
Because you will be very aware, I mean, if we just put the pandemic in Ukraine to one side, back in 2019, Boris Johnson won a landslide, an 80-seat majority, not even as big as the one that you have won. He won it because of the Red Wall in large part, and because he promised to get Brexit done. He acknowledged that the Red Wall had lent him their votes, and that if he didn't deliver, they would take their vote back. And you must be aware that you have a massive responsibility to deliver that change in much more straitened circumstances. Are you worried?
No, because I think there's contrast between Keir Starmer and whether it's Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson is there for all to see. He is a serious politician. He is a person who works hard, who is dedicated, and who isn't interested in glib headlines. He's interested in rolling up his sleeves and getting the job done. I mean, I think one of the things we've seen throughout my 14 years as a Member of Parliament is just how volatile politics is. And actually in Keir's speech this morning, he said, we have to earn your trust. We know that every single day. And he said, we will serve you whether you voted for us or not. And he really understands people are so frustrated. Things could change very, very quickly. So we have to deliver. That's why we've set out those first steps. That's why they have been fully costed and fully funded. But they are part of a longer-term plan. But the point is to make a start. And I know people are cynical. But I know that great reforming Labour governments in the past created the NHS, brought in the minimum wage, the Equal Pay Act, maternity pay, paternity leave, devolution in Scotland and Wales. We did those things. So the reason I am confident change can happen is Labour has done it before and we're determined to do it again.
Can I ask you about some some more difficult news that you have kind of had to deal with.
I think I might know what you're going to ask.
I know. I mean, there's been a lot of focus on Nigel Farage and reform, but actually, if you look at Wes Streeting's result, only winning by 500, Thangam Debonair losing to the Greens, both cases because of pressure from people who are against the stance Keir Starmer has taken on Gaza and Israel, and then your neighbour, Jonathan Ashworth, your predecessor as Work and Pension Secretary, who lost his seat hugely surprisingly in Leicester South.
I think he knew there were problems coming, Ed.
Well, it was a surprise to many people that he lost. That wasn't on our radar. The point is, I mean, this is clearly an issue for Labour, isn't it? What's happening with Greens and Independents on this Gaza foreign policy issue. How would you advise Keir Starmer to kind of deal with this? How do you explain Jonathan Ashworth's defeat?
Well, it's a real issue, and I'm a person who believes that we have to listen to voters. We don't tell the voters that they're wrong. We listen to them, and that's what Keir Starmer has been doing with the Labour Party. That's why he's transformed it, and why overall, despite those really, really difficult results for good friends and good colleagues, that's why that changed Labour Party is why we've won such a significant majority tonight. But I know that this issue means a huge amount to people. But the truth is that we will only end the appalling suffering in Palestine. We will only get peace and security for the Palestinian people and the Israeli people through a ceasefire, a peace process and a two-state solution. And even though I know for many people that seems further away than ever before, we have to work every day to secure that. And I know that is what Keir Starmer will want to do as Prime Minister.
Liz, thanks very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Liz Kendall there. Right, just coming up to 8:30, lots more still to come. On Good Morning Britain's special election programme, we are with you until 9:25 this morning. And then don't stop watching, because ITV News with Julie Etchingham will continue the coverage throughout the morning. And still to come, we're joined by the People's Chancellor, Martin Lewis, who will give his take on the election results this morning.
First of all, we'll get the travel, the weather, and in particular the election news wherever you are around the country. See you in a moment.
Good morning, I'm Fraser Nichol with your GMB headlines here in Scotland. It's been a disastrous night for the SNP as Labour take a landslide victory in the general election. Many Central Belt seats have turned red, while Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross has been unseated as an MP. Ewan Petrie reports.
It's been a night of celebrations for Labour. The party's leader in Scotland greeted the new MPs for Glasgow after taking all 6 seats in the city from the SNP.
Look, an absolutely historic day here in Scotland and right across the UK. We have come from our worst result since 1910 and coming fourth in the last general election to winning here in Scotland, winning a majority in Scotland and winning a majority right across the UK. And I want to say a sincere thank you to everyone right across the country who have put their faith and trust in the Scottish Labour Party.
Labour has swept to victory across the Central Belt. Former Cabinet Minister Douglas Alexander among those celebrating success. For the SNP, there were few moments to cheer. Its Westminster leader Stephen Flynn held his seat in Aberdeen South. But there is little disguising the scale of the party's defeat.
There's a huge setback to the Scottish National Party by these results tonight. In no shape or form am I denying that. This is a big challenge for the SNP. We've got to learn lessons from this. We've got to understand why. About half the population support independence, but they've not been prepared to support the Scottish National Party. I think the overwhelming mood in this election was to get the Tories out.
The Conservative Scottish leader Douglas Ross lost out to the SNP in Aberdeenshire North and Bury East.
What we knew was going to be a risk here is a reform vote was going to allow the SNP in by the back door. And I think so far this is the highest reform vote we've seen in Scotland, almost 15%. And that's a risk. That was what we warned people about.
A seismic night for Labour. But as their celebrations continue, the big questions begin for the SNP and Conservatives. Ewan Petrie, Good Morning Britain.
OK, let's get the weather now with Sean.
Murine Hay Fever Relief Eye Drops sponsors the local weather on Good Morning Britain.
Good morning. Thankfully not as blustery as yesterday, so at least when the sunshine comes out it should feel not too bad, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. It could be a lot better at this time of year, mind you. Another day of sunshine and showers, a lot of showers developing across inland parts of the mainland for a time. Again, a few of those on the heavy side. I'd say temperatures probably around the mid-teens for many of us and staying on that cool side into the weekend. Some chilly nights too. Bye-bye.
There will be a Scottish election special at 3 o'clock. Join us then if you can. Bye for now.
Breaking news in the last couple of minutes. Greg Hands, the Tory MP in Chelsea and Fulham, has lost his seat to Labour's Ben Coleman by 152 votes. Some of these losses, wins, are absolutely tiny, aren't they?
Former chair of the Conservative Party, close ally of George Osborne, but, you know, Chelsea and Fulham.
Gone to Labour.
Goodness.
All part of the Labour landslides. Lots more still ahead on Good Morning Britain's election special programme. We're here until 9:25, so you've got almost an hour of us left.
Because it's 8:33 and you're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV1, and we really want you to stay with us till the end of the show.
See you in a moment.
John from work said it's a lovely hike.
Right, Rosie, can I have the boots bag? No, I meant the hiking boots bag. Did we not bring it?
Such a shame.
Buy one, get the second half price on health solutions at Boots.
Sanex Expert Skin Health Body Wash with Moisture Lock technology deeply nourishes your skin for up to 12 hours, makes it feel instantly soft and hydrated. Sanex Body Wash, certified by the British Skin Foundation. And after, feel confident for up to 48 hours with Sanex Dermo Antiperspirants.
Discover a velvety crema and a world of flavour, all at the touch of a button. Tailored to every taste. Nespresso Virtuo. What else?
I need to tell you something. It's about my muller rice. I want it warm.
Nonsense! The microwave is for soup or drying socks.
I want mine warm too.
Muller, love every bit.
The £15 million jackpot must be won this Saturday, or thousands of you will win a share of the prize. But who will it be? Maybe Pat, thinking his numbers don't look spread out enough. Or Helen, who's now wondering if she should play. It's 15 million, Helen. Of course you should. The £15 million jackpot must be won this Saturday. Lotto, will you be next?
You know, I didn't think I could sell my car because I've got outstanding finance. Yeah. We Buy Any Cars just sorted it all out for me. I'm getting the soft top.
Just sold my car to
We Buy Any Car.
Just sold my car to We Buy Any Car. Just sold my car to We Buy Any Car. Just sold my car.
To find out how much your car's worth in 30 seconds, enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Verrucas can root themselves deep under the surface of the skin. No other gel is more effective at targeting them than Bazooka Extra Strength Treatment Gel. And no other self-freeze treatment is more effective than Bazooka Sub-Zero. It may only take one application. Trust our experts and Bazooka that verruca. Tackle stubborn warts and verrucas with Bazooka Advanced Treatment Pen. Its fast action can provide visible results in as little as 5 days.
Sarah likes to squeeze as the sun comes up.
Squeezing beans.
Primula, don't ask why, just try.
Fast just got better. New Persil Wonder Wash. Our first ever detergent designed for shorter cycle. Better on odor, better on fragrance. New Persil Wonder Wash. Fast just got better.
In France, the brioche is sacred.
No. No.
frère, for France's sake, eat avec respect.
At Morrison's, get handmade Scotch burgers for 60p each from your Market Street butcher.
Morrison's to shop at Morrison's.
Very good morning to you. You're watching Good Morning Britain's election special. And in our last exclusive Good Morning Britain poll by Survation, it was only 2 days ago, our viewers said the single most important issue was the cost of living when it came to casting their votes. Well, the man we call the People's Chancellor, Martin Lewis, joins us now. Don't worry, there's going to be...
You've had the real things in today. You're not...
Yeah. We've got plenty of ex-chancellors. In fact, we've got Kwasi Kwarteng back on set with us this morning. We just spoke to George Osborne. But seriously, Martin, cost of living was probably the biggest issue, wasn't it, in this election?
Yeah, it's been the biggest issue for a long time. Now, the first thing I should say is that congratulations to the new government. I think what we all have to do as a nation when you have a new government, regardless of which party it is wish them well and hope they improve the situation in Britain. And it does need improving. Our national societal infrastructure is struggling at the moment. Now, what I suspect is going to happen in the next couple of weeks is Labour, once they get fully into government, they're going to do some form of revelation saying, wow, the finances are so much worse than we expected. There's a big economic black hole. Things are going to be very tough, and do some expectation management. Of course, we all know that already, and you'll know, Susanna, because I've sat next to you when I've been doing it. I've been pushing candidates from all parties on what they're going to do to fill the huge black hole in the nation's finances. But I think what that means for the cost of living is that the new government will be looking for things that do not cost the Exchequer a lot of money to do. They're going to need in the first 100 days to make a difference to the country. They're going to want to show people that things have changed, that they need action. They're going to be starting to deliver, but they're going to have to do it in a way where, unless it was pre-announced in a manifesto, it doesn't cost. So examples will be... and some of this is from the manifesto, some of this is from the leaders' debate that they ran on my website, and I've been rereading the answers from Sir Keir Starmer again this morning, from the Prime Minister almost again this morning. Rents. They're planning to build 1.5 million homes over the terms of the Parliament. Let's see if they can deliver that one. But they're also talking about finally banning Section 21 no-fault evictions. There is a huge power imbalance at the moment between landlords and renters, and that needs to change, and I think it will change. And the building home situation certainly should be helpful to mortgage holders. The retail policies, as they call them, the sort of pound-in-your-pocket policies on mortgages, I don't think are that big a great shakes. They're talking about a mortgage guarantee scheme to help people, first-time buyers with limited deposits. I think there's a lot more that they could be doing on that scenario, but it isn't in the manifesto so far. So everything I'm looking at the moment is all about what can they do without spending too much.
Martin, while we're talking to you, we're also watching Rishi Sunak leaving Conservative headquarters in his Range Rover. We don't know where he's going. We're just seeing those pictures now. Can I ask you a question about taxation? Because you've talked about that black hole in the public finances. And we know that Labour have said they won't raise income tax, VAT or national insurance. We know that they have talked about some taxes where they will move, for example, taxing private school fees, but they've been pouring cold water on a revaluation of council tax. Maybe they do something on inheritance tax or capital gains tax. Very hard to raise a lot of money from those things. Are there other areas which we haven't talked about which a radical government could decide, if they've got a big majority, to go into? For example, could they look at land taxation? Could they try and overhaul the whole way in which petrol cars, as we move to electric cars, the whole way they tax cars and driving and road use? Are there things which they could go after where they could say there was an economic case for doing it, but which would also bring in some much-needed revenue?
Well, You're right, they've said they won't raise taxes. They've also said they won't substantially cut spending. They've also said they won't increase government borrowing, and they're not planning to print money. So that is all four of your hands, if you had them, tied behind your back, which means the only weapon you've got for filling that black hole is growth, and it will be very tough to have growth to the level that is needed to fill it. So I think you're probably looking at, I think capital gains tax is, to some extent, is probably right for a few percentage point raise there. I mean, it is a lot cheaper to make profit than it is to make income. You're taxed a lot less on the profits you make on selling assets than you are on earning money. The land tax, not my area. It's not a consumer finance thing that I look at, so I'm not going to comment on that one. I mean, I think there's probably, if you're looking at what you could do, there's been talk for a long time at looking at pensions, whether they've said they won't change the lifetime allowance back and, limit the total amount that people can put into pensions. There's always the annual allowance they could change. As a much more radical thing, they could limit pension tax relief so that everybody gets the same tax relief as basic rate taxpayers. At the moment, higher rate and top rate taxpayers get more from the state towards their pension because they pay more tax. So when you get the tax back, you get more of it. But I think we probably won't hear much of that until September, and we don't really know. At the moment, it's that retail stuff, and there's lots out there. Again, it's those small things that will matter. Carers allowance. If you go a penny over carers allowance at the moment, you would lose the whole thing. And this has been devastated because tens of thousands of people owe substantial back pay for just going pence or pounds over the allowance. What they should be doing at that is looking at stopping the clawback and making it so it's not a cliff edge. Yep. So that if you earn a pound over, you lose a little bit, you don't lose a lot.
Martin,
insurance they could look at.
I'm just going to interrupt because just because you're talking about carers allowance, care has been a massive feature of Ed Davies' campaign, and we can hear him now.
By hearing your concerns. And that is why in this campaign, we fought a really positive campaign about your concerns, about how we wanted to make sure you got help with the cost of living and the difficult economic circumstances. We listened to you on the environment and your concerns about the appalling sewage scandal, and that's why we have policies to tackle that. And above all, we listen to you about your concerns about the crisis in our health system, in our care system. And that's why we put solving that, fixing that, right at the heart of our agenda. During this campaign, I've told you about my own story of caring and being a carer for much of my life. And I want to thank all the people who've come to me and responded in such generosity, telling me that my story is your story. And I want to make sure that we represent the millions of carers out there as we rebuild our health system and do something special to support carers and care workers. And I think if we do that, we can earn your trust. So I promise you, having put it at the heart of our agenda, we are now going to work on health and care. We're going to go to Parliament to represent you. Our first campaign that starts today is a campaign for emergency budget this month for health and care.
So Andrew and Kevin are still with us.
Yeah, that's Ed Davies speaking to party workers at Liberal Democrat HQ.
Sorry, Martin.
Interesting. Yes, it's only that Martin's standing by.
I didn't realise that. I apologise for that.
To finish his points. Martin,
sorry, Martin.
We interrupted you to hear from the Lib Dem leader, who I have to say his tone and mood you wouldn't have expected from someone who'd won such a huge number of seats.
Quite sombre.
For his party. And perhaps he didn't want to sound too enthusiastic. I mean, 71 seats is an extraordinary number for the Lib Dems.
He's totally overcompensated.
Right, Martin, we interrupted you. You were going to finish very important point about where the money might come from and what people might expect.
Well, again, I go back to what this government will need to do is do as many things as possible to change the country that don't cost the Exchequer any money. I mean, it's interesting to hear Ed Davey calling for, an immediate budget for health and social care. Well, he can call for it, but they've won a lot of seats, but they still are, they're not the Labour government, and it's Labour who'll be doing it, and I suspect we'll have a budget in September. Energy bills is a big challenge facing the new government. While they've just gone down, we're expecting them to go up 10% in October, and that's pretty much locked in now. Not the exact 10%, but certainly that they will be rising in October. Probably somewhere between 7 and 13%, I think, is probably the right type of range. That's, of course, going to be a piece of negative news that comes out and could factor into inflation, could be difficult. In conversations I've had, I think they're going to push hard to lower the standing charges. Both Tories and Labour promised me they would do that if they got in, so I will certainly be holding their feet to the fire on that one. I think other things I'd look at, I mentioned before, insurance, car and home insurance prices have rocketed over the last couple of years. It's the untalked about element of inflation. You know, car prices up, doubled in the last 3 years. They've told me they will be looking and talking to the regulator about how they bring that back. So I think that's what I expect to see in the next 100 days. Lots of things they can do whereby regulatory or planning changes or looking at policy, they can have an impact, but trying not to cost the Exchequer too much money because the cupboards are pretty bare.
OK, Martin, thank you very much indeed. Another loss for the Conservatives is the seat of Hendon, and Labour have won it, but the difference is 15 votes. Now, we can speak to a constituency MP who has retained her seat, Dawn Butler.
By more than 15.
50? Yeah, yes, thank goodness. Was there a recount as well? I can imagine
we're just getting the details now. From
David Pinto-Jasinski is the new MP.
Wow. Well, amazing.
You'd imagine a recount, wouldn't you, if that's 15 in it?
Exactly. But this is the thing, when people say voting doesn't matter, the results like this that have come out, especially this year in this election, shows you that every single vote matters. So if one thing that people take away from this is don't underestimate the value of your vote.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I know the seat, and Matthew Offord was the MP. He stood down, the Conservative. Right. And it'd be interesting to know I don't know who the candidate was, but it would have been a new candidate. So that difference is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, 15 votes in it. Yeah. Dawn Butler, you're a Labour MP, so congratulations. What does it feel like to be part of the party of government?
Well, came in with Ed in 2005 when Labour was in government, and I'd only kind of ever known government. Being in opposition really stinks. So the thought that we're going back into government is exciting, it's phenomenal, but it is going to be difficult. But you've
been out of government for longer than you were in government.
Absolutely.
You personally.
Absolutely. So it's going to be a very difficult time and a very difficult feel. And we do need to be sort of a lot more sensible. And I do think it's going to take a while. Like everybody's saying, what's going to be the big idea? I think the campaign has shown you that there's going to be no real big ideas from the Labour Party because there's a lot of mess that needs to be cleared up.
We're just watching as you're speaking. This is the one of the Labour battle buses collecting people up to take them off, presumably to some kind of victory party. It is a challenge now, isn't it? I mean, we just saw Ed Davey there, sort of his mood muted. And I was surprised about that because the Liberal Democrats have done very well. Here's Kate. Let's have a listen to what she's saying.
And I think she's with the Shadow Business Secretary, Johnny Reynolds.
Situations we've seen sometimes in history, it happens, but Jonathan is a great guy, Thangham as well. Huge part of the team, and obviously everyone is thinking of them as well in this. But this is, British politics today, there's no such thing as safe seats. There's no way you can avoid that volatility. It's there, it's a feature of the system. We all know that, but it still makes it very hard when you've got a situation like this. And they've been a huge part of it, and there'll be roles for them, I'm sure, in future.
Congratulations on your return. I guess you're no longer Shadow Business and Trade. Have you had a phone call yet to confirm?
That's all for the future.
Is it?
Only a new Prime Minister can do that.
After you've unloaded the bus, now the job is done. What's your next job this morning?
Well, I'm going to go home and see the family. Thank the grandparents for looking after the kids. And obviously see what plays out, but I hope that Keir Starmer's invited to form a government by the King.
Good to speak to you. Right, let's go. I've never been inside. Shall we go inside? You go. Yeah, let's go inside.
Kate, do you want to come on the bus?
I'll come on.
Kate's getting on the battle bus to see where it's going.
Don't give away your umbrella, Kate.
Yeah, she's getting on the magic bus. So, Dawn, as I said, the mood is triumphant, of course, landslide, it's historic. But as you describe it, you know, there are huge challenges. And as we joined that interview with Jonathan Reynolds, he was acknowledging the fact that two significant Labour names, Jonathan Ashworth in Leicester, who was one of the directors of the campaign for your party, and Thangnam Debonair as well in Bristol, both lost their seats. You have an issue with foreign policy, and you have an issue with how you're going to deliver what your voters expect.
Yeah, so first of all, my condolences to some great MPs who have lost their seat. It's really hard. Ed mentioned that earlier. But yeah, there are a lot of policies and a lot of issues that we will need to tackle. And I'm reminded of a conversation I had with somebody, and we were like, Keir Starmer, steer calmer. You know, so we're just going to have to take this step by step. And that's what the expectation needs to be. No big rabbits out the hat. Just what are we going to do as a sensible government? I think the country has had enough of the chaos. They've had enough of the division. And that is why they have resoundingly rejected the Tory party.
There is division, though. I mean, would I describe you as an ally of Jeremy Corbyn back in the day? You know, he's just beaten your candidate, the Labour candidate in Islington.
Susanna,
there is division over Gaza.
Susanna, I'm an ally of every Labour leader. I have been loyal to every single Labour leader. I was elected in 2005. I served under Gordon Brown and his government. So I am loyal. In fact, you know, some MPs could probably take some tips from I Behave in Parliament. But I will say this, the campaign to get a Labour government cannot be the same campaign to govern. To govern is very different. So, you know, we do need to be united as a party if we are going to go forward and govern, because we've got difficult times ahead.
Dawn, thank you very much indeed. Well, the SNP suffered its worst election in more than a decade. They lost dozens of seats in the Labour fight back in Scotland and have left the Scottish National Party in single figures.
And the SNP's leader at Westminster, Stephen Flynn, held on to his seat, securing 15,213 votes to the Labour candidate's 11,455. He joins us now from Aberdeen. A really difficult night for the SNP. We were discussing these issues just a few days ago, and I was asking you if the SNP were the largest party, then your leader, John Swinney, has said that gives you a mandate for an independence referendum. But, you know, how are you feeling today with the SNP down into single figures, clearly well behind Labour, clearly a big setback for independence?
Yeah, I'm absolutely scunnered, like I think everyone is in the SNP right now. We didn't necessarily see the scale of this defeat coming. I think we knew we were in for a challenging election, but the outcome is absolutely bleak. Obviously, on a personal level, I'm happy to be re-elected, but right across the country, we've lost a huge number of very valued colleagues. And I don't think it's a reflection on them. I don't think it's a reflection on the excellent work they did in Parliament. The party's been caught up in the Starmer tsunami, but it's also been dealing with its own challenges, both internally and externally, and my colleagues have faced the consequences of that at the ballot box. And we've got a pretty short turnaround time now between now and the Scottish election in 2026 to change things, to get things right and to restore the trust that we once had from the people of Scotland.
Because it's very easy for your colleagues to say the Conservatives are unpopular in Westminster. This was a vote for Labour to get the Tories out of power in Westminster, but to blame it all on unpopular Tories does feel a bit of an excuse for the SNP, because you, as you say, you face some leadership and some delivery challenges in Scotland too.
Yeah, you know what, I totally agree with you. I mean, I could sit here and I could say, you know what, we just got squeezed because people wanted to change who was in number 10. And, you know, it's partly true, but it's not the whole story. And everyone knows it's not the whole story. The party's had a number of big problems internally and externally. And what we've got to do now is be honest, not just with the public, but with ourselves, and have a frank, robust and probably quite impassioned and difficult debate internally about what went wrong and how we fix it, because we don't have a lot of time to fix it. And, that's only going to happen if people accept the scale of the defeat, if they acknowledge some of the problems that we faced. And that's a difficult process for any party to go through. We're going to have to go through it now. And I'll try and play a constructive part in that, as I'm sure everyone else who's returned as an elected member, and indeed many of those who've not returned, will do so as well.
I was with Nicola Sturgeon on ITV a few hours ago, and she looked at her mobile phone and she said, I'm really worried, she said, Stephen Flynn, I fear, is going to lose his seat. She said, but actually that may be OK, because he is probably the best person to go up to the Scottish Parliament and become the next SNP leader in Scotland and turn things around for us in Scotland. Are you a bit disappointed to be elected in Westminster when you could actually be going to turn around the SNP's fortunes back in Scotland?
I'll take your word for that wee story, because I wasn't privy to it.
She said it live on television, so...
did she?
Yeah. She shared it with the nation.
Well, I wasn't aware of that. You've just enlightened me. I've been awake for 27 hours or so, and that's not something I was aware of. I do apologise. But look, I'm actually genuinely delighted. It's been a bittersweet night, because to be returned to Westminster, given the scale of the challenge that the party's faced, is obviously a huge honour for me. And I've managed to retain a majority, which was pretty much akin to what I had before the general election. But of course, I've lost so many colleagues, valuable colleagues, and that's a tough thing. But I'm just focused on what happens next, and what happens next means the party needs to rebuild and reflect, and do so quickly. And I'll try to play a proactive role within that. And like I say, that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for all of us, but you've got to do it. We've seen other parties do it. The SNP hasn't always been in power. We built ourselves up to be in power. We need to get back to the bread and butter issues that the public want us to be talking about. We need to offer solutions to the problems that they face.
OK, Stephen Flynn from the SNP, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Stephen Flynn. Kevin
Maguire is still with us. Andrew has had to leave, but we are joined by former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng. And, of course, Dawn Butler is here as well for Labour. Kevin, just a thought on the SNP. I mean, Stephen Flynn can say what he likes, but the catastrophe at the top of the SNP party over the past couple of years with the police investigation must be hugely responsible.
And
absolutely.
And he wasn't denying that, was he?
No, well, he knows. He was a man accepting. They've been smashed in Westminster. Their vote is way below support for independence in Scotland, and it might have been merciful had he lost his seat, and then he could have stood for the Scottish Parliament. I think it was a very fair point.
What does it mean for referendum independence for Scotland?
Oh, it's gone for the foreseeable future, hasn't it? I think if they'd have come out on top with the most seats, it would have probably still not been on the agenda in Westminster, reserve powers and all that. But now they've taken a massive drubbing. After they lost that referendum in 2014, 2015, they won 56 out of 59 seats. They've dominated Westminster politics from Scotland since then. And now they're back. And, of course, he will lose his two questions at Prime Minister's Questions every week. That will now, the third party gets them, that will now go to Ed Davey and the Lib Dems. And that is a massive showcase for you. He's lost
astonishing turnaround as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. So to see the SNP, incredible. I think it's just surprised everybody.
So, in 2015, as you said, they had 56 out of 59. So there were only 3 seats in Scotland that they didn't have. And now, 9 years later, they've only got 9. I mean, it's just incredible. It's like what happened to the Lib Dems in 2015. Yeah. They got completely wiped out. We couldn't believe it. And the electorate's way more volatile.
It's got me. I know I'm changing back to the Lib Dems here.
And tactical.
That is the best third-party showing since 1923.
For the Liberal Democrats?
Yes, it's 71 seats they've got now.
Yeah, that's right.
That exceeds anything they had under Paddy Ashdown, Charlie Kennedy, Nick Clegg.
I think the other thing that's going on as well is that parties seem to be much better with first past the post. The vote is so efficient. Yeah, it's so efficient. So the Lib Dems got, 10% of the vote?
No, now this is interesting.
But don't you think it's tactical voting as well, though?
Yeah,
the tactical voting website.
That's right.
But, Kwasi, I think that's really interesting because, in fact, and you say that, this is what first past the post working. I wonder whether Reform would take issue with that.
Well, he would disagree. I mean,
and I'll tell you why. Because the Liberal Democrats got 12.2% of the vote. Reform got 14.3% of the vote. The Liberal Democrats have got 71 seats and become the third party. Reform get 4 seats.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about, because they're much more organised locally. They know exactly which seats they can target. They know exactly which seats they can win because they've got councillors. And they've had councillors working those areas for years. Whereas a new start-up party just doesn't have that.
Just, I know we have to let you go, Kwasi Kwarteng. How do you emotionally feel when you see the party that you're part of, have been for the last, you know, in government for the last 14 years, collapse like
So
this?
the worst thing is actually the candidates and the MPs, because these are all people you've worked in government with. We talked about Liz Truss, but there are a whole host of other people.
Liz Truss, of course, former MP. You were her chancellor.
That's
She
right,
lost
that's
her
right.
seat this morning.
Yeah, so...
And you've had a message from her, haven't you?
Yeah, actually, and she said...
Since she lost, and we talked about it.
That's right, and we were talking about the fact she didn't give a speech. And she texted me and said, in Norfolk, I don't know what the actual reality is, but she said that she wasn't allowed as a loser, or it wasn't customary as a loser to give a speech. That's what she said.
Did she ask?
She could have given a speech, though.
Well, I don't know, but that's...
She was
I
a
just
former Prime Minister.
It's good that you reminded me of that, but she did text me. Clearly, she's watching GMB, which is a good
Quite
thing.
right, too.
She heard it here first.
Well, I think you're right. Above all, there is a human story, isn't there, to
That's
tell?
right. And that's what I've been on the phone to Tobias Elwood, a very good friend of mine.
Who lost his seat.
He just lost his seat. And it's the human element, where people have been MPs for, I think, 19, 20 years, 25 years.
I agree.
They're all
And
kicking themselves and
also...
thinking we should have done what Kwasi did.
Yeah. They're thinking we should join Reform. No, they're not
I bet you a lot of
thinking
Tory...
that.
things said in jest, I bet a lot of Tory MPs are thinking, if only we joined Reform.
Well, I was thinking about Lee Anderson. That was the one example.
Also the staff. You know, MPs have staff that keep them going, and they've all lost their jobs as well. So, as you say, Susanna, there is a human element to...
Dawn, you're staying with us, but Kwasi has to go. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Really, really appreciate it.
Really great to have your company this morning. Thanks very much indeed. And Kevin, we're not letting you go anywhere either.
No.
3 minutes past 9. Good morning, Britain. Our main news this morning, Sir Keir Starmer has won a landslide victory in the general election, ending 14 years of Conservative rule. Labour's predicted to win 414 seats in total, which would give them a Commons majority of 178. Rishi Sunak called Sir Keir at 4 o'clock this morning to congratulate him on his victory.
The former Prime Minister Liz Truss, the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps and Commons leader Penny Mordaunt all lost their seats. The Liberal Democrats also beat the Education Secretary Gillian Keegan as well. And we can go over to our political correspondent, Louisa James, who's in Downing Street. I don't know whether Rishi Sunak has arrived in Downing Street. Of course, Keir Starmer will be coming later on. There'll be a lot of activity in that street. This is a day of great political and constitutional change.
Yeah, I can tell you that Rishi Sunak has arrived at Downing Street. He was spotted going into the back entrance. Downing Street is ready to welcome two big moments in our country's history, with Rishi Sunak departing. We expect that around 10:30, and then Keir Starmer arriving at 12:20 or so. The weather has arrived as well, very dramatic rain, just to mean that Keir Starmer has to settle the question once and for all about whether he will use an umbrella. The lectern people have been here as well, measuring out the space where the lectern will go when the new Prime Minister stands up for the first time to make a speech outside number 10 Downing Street. These are the kind of moments that we've seen many, many times before, and in some ways the fundamentals don't change. The famous street and the front door look exactly the same, but of course the details are different every time. You may remember Theresa May and Margaret Thatcher shedding a tear as they left Downing Street, David Cameron humming a little tune as he went in. What will Rishi Sunak decide to do? What tone will he take? He's been apologetic so far, taking responsibility for the worst defeat in his party's history. And then there's Keir Starmer, who presumably has been working on this speech for a couple of weeks, despite saying that he wasn't complacent, he was going to take one step at a time, because he's going to have to take a very careful tone as well, despite that headline of that huge landslide. He hasn't got more than about a third of the share of the vote, and so there will be people who voted for him and those who didn't, waiting now to see what he's going to do, what change he can deliver that he promised for them. And that work starts the moment he walks through that front door. Tony Blair talked about his cabinet secretary greeting him and saying, "So what now? What do you want us to do?" He's expected to appoint his cabinet by the end of the day so they can meet for the first time tomorrow. Let me tell you as well that moving vans have already been spotted in Downing Street as that handover of power begins in more ways than one.
Louisa, James, thank you very much indeed. Well, this man is the winner, and this is the manifesto. And the theme of the Labour Party this election, change. Just one word. So now that they have got into power with a landslide, we will spend the next half an hour of the programme trying to work out what change might actually mean.
It's amazing, isn't it? An election is about change, and that is for the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, all those new Cabinet Ministers. Life is changing all around them.
It's 9:07. We'll see you after this.
If this is how we craft the details, imagine how it feels to drive the Mazda CX-30, a compact SUV. To experience this for yourself, search Mazda CX-30. Mazda, crafted in Japan.
Exceptional hotels and destinations up to 70% off. Voyage privé. Your journey starts here.
There's only one supermarket where every price is an Aldi price. Like these lightly sea-salted crisps for just $1.15. Or this Tex-Mex dip selection for just $1.99. At these prices, it's scanner time.
When my hair shines, I feel powerful. New LV Glycolic Gloss. Our first at-home glossing treatment with glycolic acid complex. 78% of women agreed. Get the shiniest hair of your life. Shines so good you won't believe you got it at home. You're worth that gloss. New Glycolic Gloss by L'Oréal Paris.
Imagine making life's messy little moments unhappen. This award winner from Vax can help do just that. Spill sucking, bacteria beating, carpet saving, car sprucing, stain busting, the Spot Wash Home Duo. Order direct from Vax for only $129.99 and get the Vax Stain Removal Kit worth £30 free.
Breakfast every morning. It's something everyone deserves. But for some, it's not always possible. That's why, over 25 years ago, Kellogg's led the way by helping to open the UK's first school breakfast clubs. Now, together with the amazing Breakfast Club staff, we will continue to help support over 1,000 schools every morning. Because we know better days are built on breakfast.
This is Maple. Look at that glossy coat. Those bright eyes. That pep in her step. But her boobs look great. How does she look so fresh? 2 words, butternut box. Butternut box is gently cooked, not highly processed, using human quality ingredients and always served fresh, which means more nutrients get absorbed on the inside and more benefits show on the outside. Butternut box. Unleash the benefits.
Say hello to the big Sterling Homes summer sale. So don't flip-flop around. Sale on now.
No matter how you suffer with hay fever, Beckinase provides effective non-drowsy relief for your nose and eyes for up to 24 hours. Beckinase, all the hay fever relief you need.
Sarah likes to squeeze as the sun comes up.
Squeezing beans.
Phil and Sue like to squeeze on the sofa.
Squeezy fries.
Vera squeezes wherever she pleases.
Squeeze burger.
Primula. Don't ask why, just try.
Welcome back.
Kevin's still here, so is Keita Harry, so is Labour's Dawn Butler. And we're now also joined by former Conservative MP Giles Brandreth.
Yes, and a superstar actor, Succession's Brian Cox, just one of your many accolades. Brian Cox, just wonder if I can ask you, you were a big backer, the SNP.
I was.
And independent.
I still am.
Right. But it doesn't look like Scotland was.
No, I think that the problem has been that there have been too many problems, as I think Stephen said very aptly, within the party. And I think that's affected us. And I'm not sure, even though I do firmly believe in independence, I'm not sure that should have necessarily been front and centre in this at this particular time. I'm saddened by it, of course. I'm also conflicted, because I'm I am a socialist, so I'm delighted that we have a Labour tomorrow, and I'm delighted we've got rid of the Conservative Party. Sorry, Giles. But I am...
I can take it. From a superstar, I can take it.
Doesn't that capture the dilemma, Brian?
Take it from me.
Doesn't that capture the dilemma of lots of Scottish voters? Because
totally.
they may have voted yes in the independence referendum, but also lots of them will have been former Labour voters, maybe want Labour rather than Conservatives in Westminster. And the problem is, at the moment, it's hard to have both.
It is. It's almost impossible to have both. But, you know, Labour, in fairness, Labour has really kind of started in Scotland. That's the irony of it. And I think they've always been reassured by that, though they lost momentum considerably all those years ago. I mean, I remember I was present at when the referendum debate was happening, and it was very, very good. It was very exciting. And also, Scotland did 62%. We voted. And this is also the thing that I find really extraordinary about this whole election. The whole Brexit question hasn't really been touched on. And I think Brexit has caused more damage than anything else. And I think we've suffered from that in Scotland. I think the whole country has suffered from that. But it's not been talked about. It's been the subject that's been slightly avoided, even by the Labour Party.
But I remember being with you on the Andrew Neil programme a couple of years ago and asking you, but surely in this election, voting Labour makes more sense, and you having none of it.
Well, I'm having none. I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted, Ed, because I'm a socialist. At heart, I'm a socialist, but I'm also an independent. But then my belief is that our system doesn't work anymore. I really don't. I don't believe in a united kingdom anymore. What I would like to see is a united federation, where each country is represented individually and come together as a group. Because you can't look at these islands and separate them off and say that's that and that's that. But we need some cohesion, and we haven't got it. And I don't think this election will give us that cohesion. So
if you had an independent Scotland, and the choice was in the independent Scotland to vote SNP or to vote Labour, which way would you vote?
That's for me to know and you to find out.
Giles Brandreth used to be a Conservative MP. And a lot of people are now no longer Conservative
But
MPs.
happily, my daughter is. I'm bursting with pride today. I'm wearing my heart on my sleeve because in Chester South and Edinburgh, Afra Brandreth, against the odds, was chosen by the people to be their new MP with a majority of 3,000. Yeah, exactly, over Labour and reform trading. What's interesting about her campaign, and I was up there watching it, trying to learn from her, she is very much her mother's daughter, was that it was an entirely positive campaign, played very much locally. Her commitment to the community was extraordinary, and she has achieved a wonderful result. But as we know, I'm saying this to Ed and to Dawn, I really feel today, my heart also goes out for all the losers of all the parties, because they say you shouldn't take it personally. It's the great swing of things, but you do take it personally. And the people who will have fought so hard and so long to achieve and haven't, it's a tough day for them.
Do you think that the issue was simple in this election, Giles? We have spoken to people like Mel Stride most often on this programme. And, I remember the interview he gave the day before yesterday, basically given up. We know that we're going to lose. It's just about the size of the majority. I just wonder, you talk about the individual local MPs, I just wonder whether they feel, don't give up on us. The Tory party, it became so negative and defeated.
But a lot of the MPs didn't give up. Jeremy Hunt didn't give up. Ian Duncan Smith didn't give up and have had the result as a consequence. Most MPs, though, know a little bit of history and know that there has been no government in the history of this country that has survived more than 15 years. Even Oliver Cromwell didn't last that long.
So their time just ran out.
Time does run out.
Yes,
and the word change meant everything. And actually, in a sense, the change has been achieved. They wanted a new set of faces.
And do you both feel optimistic or pessimistic about the next 4 to 5 years now, there's going to be a Labour government with a majority of 170 or so?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Keir Starmer does lead. I have a suspicion. I find him rather inscrutable as a character, but he could easily be the Clement Attlee for this generation. That could be possible, because my belief that I think Clement Attlee was probably the greatest Prime Minister we ever had, but the kind of unsung hero. So I think Keir has that possibility of becoming that.
Well, shall we find out from the Shadow Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, because she joins us now. Congratulations, Bridget Phillipson. Why do you think you won on such a great scale?
It was a phenomenal achievement. I think it comes down to the leadership that Keir Starmer has shown in turning the Labour Party around, in putting us back in the service of working people and setting out a manifesto that people could get behind, with commitments that we intend to get on with delivering, because we know that when people put their trust in you like that, there is a real responsibility to demonstrate change and progress. And I genuinely believe that our country's best days lie ahead of us, and we intend to make that real.
You have a big challenge ahead, don't you? We are not in great circumstances as a result, of course, war in Ukraine, the hangover from the pandemic. You know, we've had very difficult economic challenges. How are you going to deliver the change that so many voters now expect from you?
What we will bring after 14 years of the Conservatives is stability and purpose, and a real focus on how we grow our economy. That was a central part of what we set out during the election campaign. It's how we will make sure that people's living standards improve, that we get more well-paid, highly skilled jobs across our country, and ultimately that we're in a stronger position to support our public services that we know, after 14 years of the Conservatives, are in a really, really difficult position. So we don't for one second underestimate the scale of the challenge ahead of us. We know that is a big responsibility that we face. But I'm confident that we've got the ideas, the determination and the commitment to do it. And in Keir Starmer, someone who is focused on making sure that politics is once more about public service.
And as Shadow Education Secretary, you'll have had conversations during the election campaign and before with the civil servants in the department. You don't know yet whether you're going to be the Education Secretary, but we're all assuming that Keir Starmer's going to give you that job. He definitely should. But you will know that on day one, they're going to say to you, the civil servants, there's a huge problem with our schools, loads of them with real problems with reinforced concrete, which is collapsing, a big bill to turn this round. Is the first thing you're going to have to do, ask Rachel Reeves to help you sort out the immediate crisis in school buildings?
Well, that's why we need to get our economy growing. And what I would say is, obviously, it would be an enormous privilege to serve as Education Secretary in the Labour government. Those are matters for Keir. He will make those decisions later today. But it's such a special department, because we know it's how you make such a big difference to children's life chances. And the scale of what is needed is big, absolutely. The Conservatives have left our schools crumbling, children not achieving all that they should, far too many children where their background determines what they can go on to achieve. But the change that we will bring is that we will work right across the sector with teachers, with support staff, with everyone who works in education as a part of a national endeavour to make sure that education is front and centre of national life once more. We'll reset that relationship. We will do things differently. People will see change under Labour. That's what they voted for. That's what we'll deliver.
Bridget Phillipson, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Good luck.
Right. We want to give a last minute to each of you. Brian Cox, you put your hand up first, like someone in a classroom.
I know,
just been talking about education.
I was just checking what she said. I do think that one of the things that the Tories did is stripping the civil service in the way they have done. So there is no other kind of viewpoint of people who really know what they're doing and who've been through so much. And I do think that's something that Labour really has to restore.
All right, Giles, your final thought.
My final thought is that the Conservatives can learn something from Keir Starmer. Because though it's a fantastic result for Keir Starmer, I think the share of the vote is not that remarkable. It may even be the lowest share of a vote of any government that's actually been elected. The numbers of MPs is great. But what he has done is, in 4.5 years, turn it around. Boris Johnson did incredibly well. 4.5 years later, Keir Starmer has done incredibly well. It is possible, actually, If you lead in a united way and you keep your party united and you place it in the right position, in 4.5 years, you can turn it round. So if you're an eternal optimist like me, I'm full of hope, not just personally, but nationally as well.
OK. Dawn Butler, can Sir Keir Starmer keep the party united over the course of the next government?
I think it's going to be really important. I mean, with a huge majority, there is a risk that, you know, that might not be the case. So it's important that, you know, the party is kept together, the government is then stronger and kept together. I think ultimately a Labour government will be about public service, not about self-service. And I think the last Tory government was all about self-service and the country had enough of it.
Guito Harry, you were Boris Johnson's right-hand man in the communications department. What do the Tories do now and who do they select as their leader?
I think Giles has nailed it in saying that, you know, if they pause for a second, or rather a few weeks, couple of months, and think, not who do we like, who's my favourite at the moment, who do I owe a sort of a vote to, but think, where can we be in 4 years' time? And actually sooner than that, in the next 2 years, elections in Scotland and Wales, who can we pick that will start to look like an alternative to a Labour government that, though I wish them well, will disappoint almost from day one? Junior doctors, steel workers in Port Talbot next week, decisions over the summer, what's going to happen, you know, in the Middle East and all that. It's going to be rough. So 2 years from now, who is best placed? And the choice of leader is critical, and it's important that the party, for once, having had 2 years where it's been practically delinquent in Parliament, surely this is the lesson finally taught, that only when you unite and play the game in front of you and back your leader, whoever he or she is, that you actually make any impact.
And Kevin Maguire, we've been talking about this election almost daily, all of us, since the beginning of the campaign. Back 6 weeks ago, you can't have thought Labour could get a majority on this scale. As you look forward, what's it going to be like a Starmer premiership?
Well, what the voters give, the voters could take away, or what the voters take away, they can give back, which the SNP and the Conservatives will be hoping. He says he'll roll up his sleeves and he'll work hard. He's got to show progress almost immediately. You've got to start having people feeling better off. You've got to start improving public services. And if the scale of the task is anywhere close to what he says about broken Britain, I don't think he's given himself the levers to do that. He's going to have a reckoning in a couple of years on that, on spending, on what you actually do. He's really got his work cut out because he's painted the country red in terms of MPs, about 2/3 of the MPs, but he's only got just over 1/3 of the votes.
And that red wall doesn't necessarily stay red.
No, but if the split on the right continues and there's a battle for the soul of the Conservative Party now, whether it goes one nation, looking towards the majority of people, or it goes off in a Farageist direction, well, that will be wonderful it'll be wonderful for Starmer if it either goes right or the right remains split.
Thank you to our fantastic panel, all of our guests this morning, and to all of you for watching this Good Morning Britain election special. It has been a historic general election 2024, called by Rishi Sunak 6 weeks ago in the rain outside number 10 Downing Street, and ending with Sir Keir Starmer entering number 10 Downing Street as Prime Minister. A landslide for Labour, Tories decimated, Lib Dems back in third place, 4 Reform MPs, including Nigel Farage. Sir Keir Starmer promises change. Now it's time to deliver.
It's been a long night, it's a new day, and we'll be back on Monday from 6 to see how Keir Starmer, as Prime Minister, takes things forward. See you soon.
Well, thank you very much, Ed and Susanna, and a very good morning from all of us here. It has been quite a night, has it not? And there is plenty of political drama yet to come. We're on air with continuing coverage, following every moment as it unfolds and unpacking last night's historic results with our experts. Sir Keir Starmer will shortly become the UK's new Prime Minister after leading the Labour Party to a landslide victory. Hundreds of seats have changed hands overnight, giving him a colossal mandate.
You campaigned for it, you fought for it, you voted for it, and now it has arrived. Change begins now.
A very different picture for the Conservatives, of course. The election called in a downpour has ended in a Tory wipeout. There have been such heavy losses, including a former Prime Minister and some of Westminster's most high-profile figures. Rishi Sunak has taken the blame.
The British people have delivered a sobering verdict tonight. There is much to learn and reflect on, and I take responsibility for the loss.
So Ed Davey generated yet more eye-catching images this morning, dancing with delight after a resurgent Liberal Democrat Party waltzed back to Westminster. He says it's their best result for a century. Nigel Farage finally became an MP. Reform now have a parliamentary base and will be a political force to be reckoned with. And seismic shifts in Scotland with an end to almost a decade of SNP dominance. John Swinney's party swept aside by Labour. Well, for the next few hours, we'll be following all the latest events and speaking to the key political players about what happens next. To help, we have teams with all the political parties and in all 4 nations and regions, the end of a marathon for the leaders and for our correspondents. And we will be live in Downing Street, of course, where one Prime Minister will leave for the final time, another will arrive with an in-tray overflowing. We are also, of course, at Buckingham Palace, where the King will say goodbye to one Prime Minister and welcome in another.
Plus, I'll be live in Westminster throughout the day, bringing you the very latest on the shape of the new cabinet, the Tory leadership race, and most importantly, trying to find out what this historic outcome means for your future.
Meanwhile, I'll be finding out why you voted the way you did and what you want from the new team at the top.
And here in the studio talking us through all the detail will be Daniel Hewitt and our long-time election analyst, Professor Colin Rallings, who's been up all night and he's still going and he can put all of last night's results in context. That's all coming up over the next 6 hours. You won't miss a thing. OK, in that spirit of not missing a thing, we are going to take you straight to Downing Street because all eyes are actually there. We're waiting, of course, at some point a bit later this morning that we'll hear from Rishi Sunak as he prepares to go to resign to meet the King. But we also know that Jeremy Hunt, the outgoing Chancellor who managed to hold on to his seat in Godalming so narrowly overnight. We saw images a little earlier of him arriving there at number 11 with his rucksack on, ready to pack up and move his family out of there. He said to his supporters who saw him manage to cling on his seat, there he is. And we can see Jeremy Hunt with his family, with his young children and with their dog by the looks of it. We know there have been a couple of pets in Downing Street keeping Larry company over the last few years, but the images there of Jeremy Hunt. Let's just have a listen in. It's a real insight, isn't it, into one of those moments of a family navigating what happens on the national political stage as they prepare to leave number 11. Jeremy Hunt just clung on in Godalming and Ash with a majority of 891. There were recounts overnight. That's going to be one of the shots of the day, really, isn't it? Jeremy Hunt departing with pet in tow. And Libby Veena's there witnessing these images, and that's going to be one of the images of the day, Libby.
Yes, indeed. The old guard leaving and the new guard arriving. Of course, Jeremy Hunt lost out in that leadership election in 2019 to replace Theresa May. He lost out to Boris Johnson, but his career was resurrected after that disastrous mini-budget that Liz Truss brought in, and she was forced to look for other candidates to help her in that role in number 11, and she chose Jeremy Hunt. And I think many observers feel that he was dealt a very, very difficult hand to play, but did stabilise things to a considerable extent. And of course, when Rishi Sunak called this election 6 weeks ago, he was boasting of the fact that inflation was down to 2.3%. And I think that was one of the Chancellor's key aims when he took the job back in 2022.
It was. I was just noticing some of the words that he said when he was it as his count earlier on, Libby. He was saying on that that the election has been a crushing defeat for the Conservatives, but he also said, "Don't be sad. This is the magic of democracy." And I suppose that's what we're seeing unfold in Downing Street. As you just said, it's that transition of power. Literally, you see a van pull up, a family get on board, and out they go through the gates.
Yes, I think few countries in the world have such a swift handover of power. Effectively, Rishi Sunak is still Prime Minister until he hands in his resignation to the King at Buckingham Palace. There will be a very short interlude of around 45 minutes before Keir Starmer accepts the offer to become Prime Minister. So there is that brief period between the two men being in charge, but we will see Keir Starmer coming back after that visit to Buckingham Palace, and he will be Prime Minister and wanting to get down to business immediately. We're expecting him to start appointing his cabinet early this afternoon.
Libby, I just wonder what you make of the sort of presence that will still be there of Jeremy Hunt for the Conservative Party as they attempt to sort of regroup and work out where they go next. It was so striking, of course, that he was a leadership contender himself against Boris Johnson. When the Conservative Party sits down in the aftermath of the sort of wreckage of the overnight, I mean, do you think it's possible that he could emerge again?
Well, he did try to become leader, as I said, and failed. But I think the big question is whether the Conservatives can put the infighting over Brexit behind them. Whatever you think of Brexit, it does seem to have been instrumental in the self-destruction of the Conservative Party. They've been fighting about it for years. Even after that referendum 8 years ago, they didn't seem to be able to decide what sort of Brexit they wanted, what it actually meant for the country. And we've seen 3 prime ministers since the last election. I think that's an extraordinary tally, which is one reason the public was so emphatic in their decision to look elsewhere for leadership. But it is possible that Jeremy Hunt will want to throw his hat in the ring. But the fact is he did lose last time, and the membership was still very much in favour of a man who had led the Leave campaign, Boris Johnson. It really is a question of whether they are beginning to have second thoughts as to whether, I think, Jeremy Hunt could actually emerge as a potential candidate.
OK, Libby, and forgive me for slightly repeating one of the points that you've made there. It was a little bit chaotic as we scrambled to get everything sorted here in the studio. We'll check in with you again a bit later on. So let's recap on the statistics of the night and see how many seats the parties have ended up with so far. With just a handful of seats yet to declare, Labour are on... where's the latest figure? 411 seats. The Conservatives lost almost 250. They stand on 119. The Liberal Democrats, delighted, have 71. Reform picked up 4 seats. The Greens are also on 4. While the SNP have 9 seats, one of the big stories of the night, of course. It's also worth mentioning that turnout was heavily down at around 60%. So let's see what the parties are up to this morning. Ranveer Singh is at Conservative headquarters. Rebecca Barry is at Labour HQ in London. First of all, before we talk to Rebecca a bit further, let's listen to what Sir Keir Starmer had to say this morning.
You campaigned for it, you fought for it, you voted for it, and now it has arrived. Change begins now. And it feels good, I have to be honest. 4.5 years of work changing the party. This is what it is for.
Rebecca, a quite astonishing night for Sir Keir Starmer. What is happening there this morning? There's a light drizzle, not a great deal of activity behind you, but perhaps you can tell us a bit more.
Yeah, it's inside this building that the Labour Party have spent months meticulously planning their route to power. And yes, I think inside here there may be a few members of the team still partying. We've seen a few people coming out with big smiles, hugs. Others might be trying to grab a few hours of sleep after that victory rally in the early hours of this morning. Keir Starmer's not here. We know that he is preparing to head to Buckingham Palace, where he will be formally